The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today, this is going to be a little different for us as we take on our fifth session with Glenn Kirschner, the former federal prosecutor, MSNBC and NBC legal contributor. A lot of our listeners ask what happens before we do the taping and after. And sometimes, as I am the producer, I forget to turn off the recording. So what you're about to hear for the next 20 minutes is a conversation. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the memorabilia that we could see in Glenn's office, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that. Scott brings up a point, and Brooklyn brings up a point, and we really are going to discuss, just between the four of us, exactly where we think the United States is headed, what concerns us, and what hopes do we have for the future. And I think the best part of this session is there is absolutely no editing into it. So you're actually going to hear it exactly as it came out as we were speaking. So I hope you enjoy. Let's listen in. So yeah, all right. So I'm noticing, this is editing. I notice your cane in the back there. Very dark shadows.
Yeah, so this is a prized possession. One of the things that I never thought would happen is after I started going on YouTube and on TV and getting a following, people will send me stuff from all over the world, literally. So this is from an 85-year-old retired coal miner from Scotland named Kenneth. And this is a shepherd's crook. It's a huge,
wow.
And he handcrafted everything from the metal tip to the wooden shaft to the amber handle. And on one side, he carved my name. And on the other side, he carved the word Hjartas, which is justice in Gaelic. And this just arrived at my door. I walk into my little office here in Leesburg, and I have boxes at my door that I wasn't expecting all the time. I could go on and tell you so many stories, but yeah, I have a lot of pride. So this is, you probably can't see the other thing. This is the giant gavel of justice that somebody sent. I mean, it's just, and I could turn this around. It's like, I've got tapestries like quilts that people, it's so heartwarming and reinforcing that I just got to keep doing this thing every day to try to get truthful, accurate information out about what's going on the rule of law front, because there's so much garbage and propaganda that folks will spew into the public square. So this has been a really interesting, gratifying professional chapter 2, not what I thought I would do in retirement.
Yeah. How about the hat?
Yeah. I was going to ask about the hat. Yeah.
So that's important. So I handled death penalty cases both in the Army and at the U.S. Attorney's Office when I was with the Department of Justice. That I was made an honorary Maryland State Trooper, and that is a state trooper's Stetson. And I've got a badge and some certificates over there from that same case where an FBI task force member by the name of Edward Totley was the undercover officer on an FBI task force that was making huge drug buys. So Ed was a Maryland State Trooper, but had been sent on a detail to be the undercover officer for the FBI operation. And while he was in an undercover vehicle, which had multiple cameras capturing what was going on inside the passenger compartment, the killer, from whom he was purchasing multiple kilos of cocaine, shot him through the head. And it was captured in living color. And then, even though this was an undercover operation with FBI vehicles positioned all over, the killer got away. The killer fled from D.C. to Brooklyn. We couldn't find him. We actually had to ultimately have America's Most Wanted do an episode. That's how we found him. So I had to go up. We had to extradite him. We had to do a hearing in New York. And then we brought a death penalty eligible case in Washington, D.C. for the murder of Ed Totley, a federal task force officer, which is death penalty eligible in the federal law. So at the conclusion of all that, they made me an honorary Maryland State Trooper. And that's one of the important mementos from my time as a federal prosecutor.
Man, it deserves to be in a place of honor, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It does bring up something. I have to ask you this question. I brought this up a million times during the election. I don't know why nobody picked up on it at all. A guy named Jamie Davidson was his sentence was commuted by Trump on the last day of office in his first term. Also killed an undercover police officer making a drug bust. His lawyer was friends with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And as a favor to the lawyer, Trump pardoned the guy on his last day in office. And for some reason, the media, even though he had gotten rearrested over the summer for beating his wife and was back in prison, the media just never picked up on this aspect of Trump's utter disregard for the police and didn't make a big deal about it. And we actually sent it to the campaign and they didn't make any hay about it either. It's there so much could have been done to stop where we are right now that wasn't done. It's almost worth having a whole other show to talk about the things that we missed.
Yeah, if you'll shoot me an email with the name of the defendant who was pardoned, I'll follow up. But that's one of the reasons I left corporate media. I got so frustrated with how, for example, mainstream media, legacy media, corporate media decided to basically report this election as well. It's just another election. Let's see what Trump says. Let's see what Biden. Oh, look, Biden fell down. Oh my gosh, there's no two sides to treason. But I was a journalism major undergrad, and we have just lost our way, both on the legal front, and I blame Merrick Garland, who I know, and I hate to say that, but I do blame him. And I blame the way the media, the Fourth Estate, again, which I think does a wonderful job uncovering corruption and reporting in many ways, but not when it comes to a presidential election where they want to make this thing seem like a horse race. So, yeah, there are so many instances like that where if people knew about it, maybe they would rethink their support for Trump. But I think once people are sucked into a cult, it's very hard to reach them. But, when we know somebody has fallen prey to a cult, we generally try to help them, try to extract them, try to enlighten them. But this, the MAGA cult is a very, very difficult cult to deal with.
But yeah, it's interesting that the MAGA cult, and you're right, it is a cult. We've said that many, many times here. They didn't trust the justice system when it was under Biden. They didn't trust Garland. And I think Garland was a good man. I think he was just timid. I think he was way too timid. But now that they've got this new dynamic going on, they seem to be all in. Oh yeah, this is perfectly fine. And we've said this so many times here that when they're done going after the people that you think they should be going after, they never stop. They're eventually going to find somebody else to come after.
Wait, hold on 1 second, Brooke, because I have to address this. Mark and I disagree on this. Merrick Garland is a chicken shit prosecutor. It took him what, 16 years to go after the Oklahoma City bomber. Is that the case that made his name? And he acted as if he had all the time in the world to go about getting justice for the January 6th and other things that went on during the first Trump administration, and because of that, we are where we are. It's another example of the things that we missed out on doing that could have prevented us from being here.
Yeah, I blame Merrick Garland for the pace that he set. Now he was a homicide prosecutor at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. He predated me. He then became a public corruption prosecutor. He was the lead prosecutor on the Mayor Marion Barry case, which was both politically charged and a challenging case on the evidence. He, Oklahoma City bombing, the Unabomber, the Atlanta Olympics bombing. The problem from where I see it is he became a judge for 24 years. Now, he was always a slow-moving, hyper-circumspect guy, but he became a federal judge for 24 years, and he could not pivot to being a prosecutor when what this nation needed was the hardest charging, most aggressive, but honest and ethical attorney general in the history of the United States to deal with the danger to our democracy presented by Donald Trump. And he completely abdicated his responsibilities, in my opinion.
Sheldon Whitehouse would have been better.
If you had your choice, if you were asked by Joe Biden, because I think this is an interesting point, who did make the attorney general other than Merrick Garland? Who would you have picked back then?
Back then it's hard to say. I think Sheldon Whitehouse is terrific. I think he's fearless, and I think he would, go hard after the ruling class criminals. We fall down on the job when it comes to going after the ruling class criminals, and whether they're political, whether it's big oil, big tech, big pharma, big entertainment, whatever. We don't have an appetite to prosecute them for their crimes. If we catch them, we let them pay millions and millions in fines and back taxes and penalties. And basically we dump that into the U.S. coffers and we call it a day. And all they do is work that into their operating budget, right? So they're going to keep criming. If you're a poor kid and you sell a rock of crack or snatch a purse, we're going to jump on you with both feet. We may even put you in pretrial detention. We have just lost our way as a criminal justice system. We should completely reprioritize, who we focus on, because the ruling class criminals, they victimize just enormous swaths of the American population, whereas the purse snatcher or the guy who's selling a rock of crack is, victimizing somebody. And I would never, ignore the victimization of somebody who had their purse snatched or their wallet taken. But that's not what's destroying America. It's the ruling class criminals who destroy America. Who would I pick? It's funny because I might have ended up going back to the federal government had Kamala Harris won. And I was asked that question a number of times. And I know who I would pick today, or who I would pick if Harris had won. The head of the chief investigative counsel, the January 6th select committee, is a guy named Tim Heaphy. Tim, you could see him sitting right up there on the dais as the hearings were unfolding. When the Department of Justice failed to investigate the suits of the insurrection, the command structure, the hierarchy of the insurrection, Tim was asked to be chief investigative counsel for the J6 committee. He came in and put that case together like a RICO case. And I know because he was one of the best RICO prosecutors we had at the Department of Justice. He and I worked RICO cases together. He was my colleague at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. So he was also the head of the investigation into the Charlottesville race riots. I forget the name of it. I can't remember the name of what they were calling that protest down there.
Right.
Yeah. And then he was the chief investigative counsel for the J6 committee. And that's the only reason DOJ got off its duff eventually, because they saw all of the evidence of criminality that a congressional committee came up with when they were sitting back on their heels for reasons that I will never understand. I would have Tim Heaphy be the attorney general because I know him. I know his work. I know how aggressive he is, but I also know how ethical he is. And, that's what we needed. We needed a person who had the heart and the soul of a prosecutor to just get after these ruling class criminals, including the political ones. And we got the exact opposite in Merrick Garland.
Yeah. So you would have gone back to the federal government.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Let me put it this way. If I had been asked to come back, I probably would have come back.
Right.
It was very hard for me to cover for MSNBC the Oath Keepers trials, the Proud Boys trials, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, because those were literally some of my fellow homicide prosecutors heading up those prosecution teams, people that I tried murder cases with, people that I supervised. And I would talk to them every day. I'm like, can I prep a witness for you? Can I do something? And it's like, I'm sitting in the audience losing my mind because I'm used to being a counsel table prosecuting the cases. And I miss it every day. So I don't know that I would have gone back to prosecute cases, but if there was some position at DOJ that I could have filled, I definitely would have considered coming back.
Well, they definitely missed out. There's no doubt about that. All right. Well, guys, that's it.
All right.
Glenn, always a pleasure. Really,
Yeah, it
we
was
got
a
to have you
pleasure
back.
talking with all of y'all. Yeah.
Oh, darn. I never got to my question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead and ask it, Brooke.
All right.
I could cut it in. I'm an
Sure.
expert at this editing thing. Me and my
Yeah, I
editing
know you are.
partners.
I know you are. Yeah, thank you for not asking me to do it. We'd still be waiting on year one. Well, 2 points, Glenn. If you haven't written a textbook for anybody, I think that you might want to think about that. And the other question that I have is, with all, well, first of all, I don't expect Musk is supposed to be in doing whatever he's doing until July of 2026, and I don't think he's going to step away from that. And I also honestly don't see what I was waving my hand about most recently was, as Mark and I have talked about before, and Scott as well, the Stalin-esque and the Hitler type and Mussolini type and all that, the net just gets thrown wider and wider, and eventually they're going to come for the rest of us, including the intellectuals and all that. I don't see that we will have free and fair midterm elections, and we talked about this last week. And I mean, I just don't see that, having put all the effort into getting where they are now and the lawlessness and the Project 2025 and blah blah blah, that especially with Musk and his Muscovite boys, that they can manipulate whatever tech stuff they want to. I don't see that there will either be no election at all, or that there will actually be a credible result.
I'm with you. I mean, now the states run the elections. So I guess, are we to assume that the blue state leadership, the leadership in the blue states, will run free and fair elections as best they can, and the red states won't? I don't, maybe. The reality is we have to keep moving forward as if there will be free and fair elections. We don't want to suppress the vote. And here is where I think it's all going to boil down to this. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with the answer to this ultimate question. And the ultimate question is, will the military, when push comes to shove, because Donald Trump will deploy soldiers to the streets for any number of reasons. I think he'll do that within his first year. When I was an officer basic, and when I went to the Army's Judge Advocate General School, after you graduate law school, get your degree, pass your bar exam, then you go to the Army's Law School on the campus of the University of Virginia before they, spit you out into your first assignment and have you practice as a JAG. What's drilled into our heads is that not only must we obey lawful orders, but we must disobey unlawful orders. I hope we have more Mark Milley's and General Mattis's in the military than we have Mike Flynn's, because it's going to come down to might. And if the men and women of the military stand up to what inevitably will be unlawful orders by Donald Trump, as filtered down through his drunken Secretary of Defense, the military is going to have to step up, just like Mark Milley did, even though, and boy, I have such respect for him, because he acknowledged his mistake when he, went on that little parade to the church. He said, I was wrong. And what a that's a brave, principled thing for somebody in his position to say. I believe, now I haven't been in active duty for a very long time, but I believe we have more Mark Milley's than we have Mike Flynn's in the military. So unfortunately, that may ultimately be where the rubber meets the road as to whether our democracy falls or it survives.
God help us.
Who protects the governors? Because it has crossed my mind that governors in blue states, New York where I am, and Illinois and places like that, if there's too much resistance and irritation, they could simply be physically removed and detained, the way you were saying the Supreme Court justices could be if they disagree, if they get in the way. Who protects governors?
Each state has its own protective service. Like in in the federal system. It's both the U.S. Marshals and FPS, the Federal Protective Service, who they have different security responsibilities. And of course, you've got the Secret Service protecting the president and certain political figures. I think each state has their own version of that. But you've got National Guard. It's going to be National Guard against the U.S. Army and the Navy. And I mean, the scenarios are not something we ever realistically had to wrestle with, but we may. I really do hope that Donald Trump's overreach and imbecility, and the overreach and imbecility of everybody he's surrounding himself with, will eventually be his downfall. Because if we lose to this dumb dictator and his flunkies, boy, maybe we don't deserve to keep our republic. I don't know.
It's hard to believe that we're, in 2025, this is the stuff we're talking about. And I always say to my students, the founding fathers could never have envisioned what we're going through today, but we have gotten the government that we deserve. Yeah. They elected it. And this is what we're left with, and it's frightening. The different scenarios that you could come out with this. I mean, it's just it is terribly frightening.
The main point of light for me right now remains the federal judiciary, setting aside the Supreme Court for a minute, because all of the men and women who are federal court judges in Washington D.C., where most of these cases, whether civil or criminal, will be brought and fought, they are ready to go. They understand that they are a firewall and a bulwark, and they're ready to do things that we've never seen done before. However, whatever they do may ultimately bubble up to the Supreme Court, and I can only hope that they actually care about the death of our democracy and begin to act accordingly. But, again, if I had to bet my buck, I don't know that I would bet a quarter of it on the Supreme Court stepping up.
No. Yeah, it's a scary thing. Hopefully the next generation will save us. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. We all teach it at the same university. And yes, we know what sometimes the next generation is thinking. And sometimes that's more frightening than the reality that we're living in. Yeah. All right, guys.
All right, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks very much.
I'll see you. Thank you.
Great to meet you.
We'll send you an email when this will probably be out this week.
Okay, I'll post it when I see it.
All right.
Thank you. And we'd like to have you back if that's okay.
Thank you, Brooklyn. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Take care.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Kirschner, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!